Now, the Atlantic Technological University have recently launched a new short online course on the whole issue of ocean pollution. The course will look to educate and highlight the importance of our oceans and the damage that can be caused by the decisions we all take and make in everyday life. Roisin Nash is a senior lecturer at ATU and now joins us on the programme. Good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
And, ocean pollution is something that we certainly should be giving an awful lot more consideration to. And maybe a good place to grab the attention of the listener here straight away is by stating and putting it out there that an awful lot of ocean pollution starts inland.
That's correct, yeah. When you look at the stats and the pollution that we're finding in the oceans, they say about 80% comes from terrestrial sources, so from our rivers and from our land, and essentially back to us, what we call anthropogenic impacts.
Now, when we think about pollution in the oceans and what you've just mentioned about, various substances that would be, I suppose, finding their way into the oceans from rivers and streams, there's a lot more. It's a much wider spectrum that's covered here when we talk about pollution in the oceans. There's issues such as noise. Tell us some of the main pollutions here that you'd be hoping to address on this course.
I think one of the things we were very conscious of is that people are obviously very visual, and what they have been bombarded a lot with is like plastic pollution. So a lot of people will be very familiar with plastic pollution, and it's an area that I research. So one of the key things we wanted to do was to cover, as you mentioned, some of the key different pollutants that we can find in our ocean. So we can have plastic pollution, chemical and heavy metal pollution, we can have nutrient pollution, noise pollution, and these are just some of the wide-ranging areas that we kind of look at. We don't go into massive depth. We want to give people, I guess, an appreciation of the variety that is there, and it's not just one type of pollution. It's the kind of culmination of all these different pollutants that we're worried about.
Now, the consequences and the impact of this pollution being let go untackled or untreated, it's fairly serious to say the least.
It is, and as I said, we kind of look at each one in isolation. So we look at plastic pollution and what are the sources, but if you look at the habitats or the places where the different animals are living within the ocean, they're not just getting plastic pollution, they're actually being bombarded with chemical and heavy pollution. Maybe there's an increase in nutrients and that's disturbing the balance. And then we have noise. So there's an actual, what they call a soundscape within the marine environment. But then we have introduced boats, we do drilling for oil, and we introduce all these other sounds that are not natural, and that can have a lot of impact. So even just say if we look at noise pollution and we're looking at animals going on their daily commute, when you introduce a new sound, they want to avoid it, so it'll put them off their path. So those large mammals maybe that are migrating, they will be pushed off their path and may not be able to find their way back onto it. You have things like plastic pollution, so you can get plastic pollution. Okay, we can see our plastic bottles that we know now we have, they're recycled there, but when these are broken down, whether it's by wind or rain or rocks, they turn into what we call microplastics. And these are that small that actually animals, sometimes when they flicker in the light, animals and birds will think they're actually fish and will actually consume them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of dangers there for them. I'm anxious as well to talk a little bit about the way that you've devised this course and how you've made it up, because sometimes people will say, well, I don't have time to, sit through a whole course about pollution. Yes, I'd like to make a difference, but, I really don't have time for all of this. However, in this particular instance, you've made this almost a fun way to learn about it, an interesting way. There's quizzes. It's not like what I would, maybe people of my generation, would consider what a course might have been like, a typical online course. There's a lot of engagement here, I think is what I'm trying to say on this particular course, where you engage with the participants.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we were very conscious with, because I know when I'm working and I want to do a course, you might want to dip in on a certain topic. So we've made it that it's completely all available at once. You don't have to progress through each one. You can pop in, you can read something about it, you can sit back and listen to someone talk about it. And as you said, there's areas that you can interact with. So there's a seascape that you can click on and listen to the different sounds, and it'll tell you what that sounds are coming from. And we put time frames. We put on how long the videos are going to be, how long it'll take you to read each section. So like that, if you're just interested in one area, you can pop in for 5 or 10 minutes and see what we tell you about that, and you can move through it. So we've divided it up into different sections as well. So we go from the sources to the pathways to the impacts and what you can do. So we've made it as, I guess, as accessible as we possibly can, that people, if they've only 5 minutes, they want to pop on, that's 5 minutes extra that we have contributed towards what they call ocean literacy and providing people with information on whichever topic they're interested in.
All right, and they don't have to go through it all in one sitting. They can come in and come and go as they please.
We get people to register online in case they're having issues, then we can see, and we release a digital badge when they've actually completed the whole course. So if people are interested in the whole thing, they'll get a digital badge at the end. But it's like the information is not available anywhere else, so you literally put the basics like your name and an email address so we can make sure that you get your digital badge at the end.
And you've got some keynote speakers as well that are taking part in this, some experts in their own respective fields.
Absolutely. I'm not an expert myself in all these different areas, so we got people in under each of the topics to talk about. So we have people like from the aquarium, Noreen Burke is talking on the importance of the ocean. We have postdoctorates talking about noise pollution who are doing research currently in that area. So we try to pick experts that are currently researching or working in that area to give their insight into the area that we're covering.
All right, well, look, it's interesting. It's, as we mentioned, a very important issue. And would it be right in saying, finally, on this, Dr. Nash, that, a lot of children probably now, once they come out of school, let it be national school and into secondary school, are probably more educated now in relations to the dangers of polluting our oceans, polluting our rivers, our lakes, so on and so forth. Maybe that's, it's the older generations that probably need to catch up here to that level of awareness that many of our youngsters have at present when it comes to the whole issue of pollution.
Absolutely, I would totally agree with that. I mean, kids today have access to the internet much more than we would have had in the early days. There's a lot more research, there's a lot more information out there. So definitely we're on the back foot, adults and my parents and my siblings, in catching up, to what is out there and finding that the dangers and looking at the variety that's happening out there and what we can do.
All right, well, look, at the very best luck with it. Hopefully there's a good uptake in it, and thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning.
No, Saul, thanks very much.
There you go. That's Dr. Roisin Nash, who is a senior lecturer at the Atlantic Technological University. And it sounds like a very interesting course there in relation to the pollution of our oceans. So many different types of pollution as well that has to be taken into consideration. And as a result of that, perhaps it's something that a lot of people could have a look at it. Various experts there, as you mentioned, from various fields that will be giving contributions to that particular course, which is now available online. And thank you indeed to Dr. Nash for joining us on the programme this morning.